Hello everyone. This is our 177th episode under Trends Literature series, and I'm more than delighted to welcome Devapriya Sanyal today, the second time over. The first time we discussed the book on Salman Khan, and I have lovely memories of the conversation that we had together. So, today we are going to discuss a very important book. She's written about one of my favorite actresses, Aparna Sen, A Life in Cinema. But before that, Devapriya, what have you been up to? What are you doing now, right now? I know you're still writing books, a lot of research on cinema, teaching cinema. So do tell us more to the new readers in our platform. Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the major changes that I actually had in professional life was like I shifted from the Department of English to
Okay.
the Department of Communication and Media Studies because my work is around cinema.
Very right.
And yeah, so I felt that place is like I'm better suited for that place.
Hmm.
And I did this Aparna Sen book, and there was one more book, and that was an academic book that looked at the directors, post independence India, 1950s
Hmm.
Hindi cinema, and how the nation has been imagined in the cinema.
Okay.
So I looked at people like Guru Dutt and Shantaram. So it was like
Hmm.
a variety. Bimal Roy, uh, Raj Kapoor, Mehboob Khan. So that was a
Hmm.
very interesting project. Right now, I'm working on something that's looking at cinema and politics, and
Oh, lovely.
there's yeah,
Oh my God.
like ideology, how it works on cinema,
You are such an
and
important
papers.
resource. Yeah.
Yeah, and cinema is important, and so is politics. So
Yes.
and papers like keep getting written. So
Yes.
that's my life.
Fantastic. But what drew you to write about Aparna Sen? I know you've been a big fan, but I mean, how come after Salman Khan you chose to write about a Bengali actress, and that too, I'm sure you've been a big fan. So tell us through walk us through your process of finally writing this book about her.
Yeah, so I'm basically like into academics, and I was working at a very I won't name the place. I was working in a very bad university. It was recently in the news, if you know, but we won't name it.
Okay.
So I really wanted a kind of like I wanted to get out of that place, so I applied for a postdoc.
Hmm.
And ICSSR and JNU, I got through JNU, Women's Studies, and so ICSSR gave the postdoc grant. So Aparna Sen actually basically came out of that study. So I was doing a comparative study of Rituparna Ghosh and Aparna Sen. So I thought it's better to kind of like develop on Aparna Sen more. I mean, she's important as a woman film director. She was probably one of the first in India around 81. She started. So I just thought it'd be good to probably convert it into a book. But I made changes, of course,
Yeah,
from
I'm
the
sure.
academics.
But what was the defining moment when you thought perhaps not an article or an interview, it has to be a full-fledged book? I mean, a book involves a lot of research, a lot of passion, a lot of time. So you did all that to write about somebody you used to admire. So when was that moment for you?
Uh, like I think when you write a paper, it becomes like very like I don't know, it becomes sort of niche subject kind of thing because only academics will read your paper on Aparna Sen if you do an academic study on her. And I thought it would be better because like there are fans out there, like lots of fans. I mean, not just Bengalis. I mean, otherwise also. So I thought it's better to like talk about her cinema, and I mean in a paper it'll get defined, right? You can only write about so many because the maximum number of words allowed in an academic paper is 10,000. This book is like 50, 60, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Because when I write, I really don't think how many words, but
Mm.
I feel I should do justice to the subject. So I think I've tried to do that.
So there's a lot of justice, I'm sure. So were you able to show the final book to Aparna Sen? How did it go? How was the whole process?
The publisher approached her for an NOC.
Okay.
And I think at this time, the time that the publisher came out with this book, there was another book by another film director who actually recorded conversations with her family and her colleagues.
So
I think my book is very different. I'm actually looking at her as a director, as an
absolutely.
editor. of like Shananda, and she was quite an important editor in the sense that she was one of the first female editors of this magazine. Like it was like omnipresent. I mean, it was to be found everywhere. That magazine,
Mm.
even men used to read it. It was that popular. So
Yeah.
I tried to address that. And when I met her for the first time, she said, "Please don't look at me as an actress because she's not happy being looked at as an actress." I don't think she's been able to like kind of accept her role as a commercial film actress.
Mm-hmm.
And she told me this was one of the reasons why she actually broke away from the commercial thing and went into like art cinema. And like she's only done art cinema. So
Hmm.
that's that.
I've always felt that Aparna Sen has a lot of layers to her character. Filmmaker, writer, female, protagonist always, and supporter of women's rights, and a feminist, of course, a public intellectual. The cinema runs in her blood. I mean, her mother's been a critic, and there have been so many layers to her. So, how was it? How was it for you to unlayer various aspects of her character, her personality, and how do you think you've been able to do justice to the entire persona Aparna Sen is in your book?
Not really. She has a political side to her also.
Yeah, that I didn't
She's
mention.
been very active.
Yeah.
She's active, and actually, I think people really wouldn't want to mess with her in a certain way. She's got that kind of an aura and
Yeah,
personality.
absolutely right from
So
the
I
beginning.
just stuck to the directorial thing and the
Hmm.
editors, like her person as an editor and as a director.
Hmm.
I think I've been able to manage something. I've been able to manage, I've tried to understand, like, why her films are the way they are. So, and she's a feminist, though she told me that she doesn't like that label at all.
Hmm.
She said, "You shouldn't call me a feminist." But then I said, I called Ray also a feminist in my book.
Yeah.
It's not a bad label to have, right?
Absolutely
Feminist.
not. We have always
So
associated her with being one. I suppose maybe
it
she feels
she
that because
is
everybody
actually.
marks her as one, she wants to move away from the label that she's been marked as. Maybe, perhaps. That's what I
Yeah.
noticed in some of the interviews as well. Uh,
Maybe.
but while you were unlayering her and trying to get to know her as a person, so what was the most surprising part about her that you felt that you didn't know, in spite of going through so much of her literature, doing your research? You're very good at research, I know. So, anything that we need to know about her, which might also surprise us?
Uh, I feel she has some clarity, like a clarity of vision. And when I spoke to her, like she came across as I felt she was quite intelligent,
Hmm.
and she's very clear about what she wants. I got that feeling. I mean, people who are actresses generally. I hope I don't sound very sexist, but generally you see them in a certain way, they behave in a certain way, they come across in a certain way, but not her. I mean, I think it could be because she went into writing and she became a director, and maybe that's why she's different. I found her quite intelligent actually, like while having conversations with her and all.
Yes, definitely. She gives you that kind of look and persona
Yeah,
and the whole
yeah,
ambience and the whole aura about her. So, the readers in our platform would really like to know from you as to what the book is really about, and how have you put various segments in the book, and how was the approach in your writing when you were defining this character, Aparna Sen. So, would you like to talk about your book a little more so that a lot of more interested people get interested in reading? There's a lot of
yeah.
hype. A lot of people in our group have been wanting to read the book, but yes, coming from you as an author, your perspective on the book, and as to what a reader should really look forward to when they want to read the book. Yeah.
What I tried to do was like I gave an introduction basically, like
Yes.
her influences, like she's always talked about her father being a huge influence on her, Chidananda Dasgupta, and he was a critic himself. Plus,
Mm.
he was a filmmaker. He did make a documentary on Ananda Kumaraswamy, and plus he was friends with Satyajit Ray. And Ray used to come to their house,
Mm.
and she stated that Pather Pachali was one of the first films that her parents actually allowed her to see.
Mm.
And being a Bengali, I can tell you that parents are very careful, as they're about schooling in Calcutta, like what school they're going to send their children to.
Mm.
And another thing is, what films your kids are watching. So that's very important. Like my mother didn't want us to watch Hindi films at all when we were young.
Okay.
So she also mentioned the same thing, like Hindi cinema was totally, like not allowed in her family. Art cinema allowed, Satyajit Ray definitely allowed. And the other thing is like, how like she develops like and 1981 she told me that it was not easy for a woman filmmaker to get funding. I mean, funding has always been like problematic for filmmakers in India. Ray's story. He didn't have enough funds. So she told me same thing. I think Ray got her in touch with Shashi Kapoor or something like that. I think that happened. So I tried to look at all that. And another thing that, the second chapter, I wanted to look at the representation of women,
Mm.
As a woman, how are you looking at women? Because,
You're making the movies.
yeah, it becomes important because sometimes, women also have the male gaze.
Mm.
Cinema, like, breeds that problem. Like the camera is never neutral, it's always male gaze.
Mm.
So I try to look at the way she looked at women, and also, how men are actually failures in her oeuvre. I always feel that. It's the same thing with Ray also.
Yes.
And then I try to kind of like, one is look, if you do this kind of a study of a director, one is like, you do a chronological study, and then you try to kind of like look at how the director has evolved over time, space. But I thought it's better to cluster her movies together. Like some films, she's not done too many, so that was helpful for me. So I clustered them in like keeping in mind certain themes. And if you see, like one is like looking at the question of the self, the woman attaining selfhood. So in that chapter, I actually looked at Paroma. I think it's
The
the one,
movie.
two, three, four, five, six, seventh. Yeah,
Yeah.
Paroma is like a person having an extramarital affair,
Yes.
and how through that she actually discovers herself, which is a very interesting premise. I
Mm.
mean, one another film that I can think of is Astitwa. I think Mahesh Manjrekar.
Mm.
So that also does not end very happily for the woman. Here also, at least the saving grace is that she attains selfhood. And another thing is I looked at this film called Goinar Baksho.
Mm.
Um, I think it is. I think it is in that chapter called Room of Her Own.
Yes.
And how she talks about women using like money, how women use and how men use.
Mm.
And it's not a very flattering picture that she presents. Men usually use it to kind of amuse themselves, because that's how she portrays the husband,
Mm.
like kind of like a decadent zamindar who has the son of a decadent zamindar who has lost all his property in East Bengal when the partition happens, and how she uses capital, which she gains through a supernatural means.
Mm.
And she changes the story quite a bit. She adds layers, and she said that she wanted to bring in three generations of women and how they're using that jewelry box
Mm.
as a means of capital, or as a means of like finding an identity for themselves. So I think her films are interesting in that way. So I tried to do that, and I critiqued her a little also,
Yeah.
because in Parama I found the gaze was a little like it was a male gaze.
Yeah. That's
Because
what you
I'll
mentioned.
give you, yeah, because when you are actually saying that the woman is having an affair, it's not necessary that the husband is also doing the same thing. Like it's not like tit for tat, right? It
Mm.
doesn't work like that. But I think basically she wanted to say that this is the usual thing that men do indulge in and
Mm.
women don't, and when they do, this is what happens. So I found that a little moral, like the little moral side to it, but
Yeah.
it's also feminist at the same time. So
You've really dissected her movies as well, and written about her as an actress. But I suppose one of the richest movies she's been associated with definitely is 36 Chaurangi Lane.
Yeah.
So do mention, do talk about it because I'm sure that this is one very important movie that one would like everybody would like you to talk about.
I think in that film, it's a debut film, and I think she's addressing this this class, this particular class in society. Um, we were familiar with because I went to a missionary school and we did have teachers who were Anglo Indians. But we were never curious about their inner lives and all. I mean, they were obviously the English teachers or the music teachers, or they could play the piano very well. It's always
Mm.
like that. They were the people who would like kind of improve your pronunciation because other Indian teachers wouldn't do that. And like when I saw her film and I had to analyze it, I felt that I think Ray has done that in Mahanagar. He's the
Mm.
only other person I think who's done it in Bengali cinema. Most people gloss over, or they don't think that that class is very important. But we did have a lot of people in Calcutta at that point of time, and even now I think uh, I learned to play the piano when I was like 8 years old, and my father bought me a piano, and I remember we got it from this store called Braganza. So
Okay.
again, Anglo Indian. So as I grew older and I actually analyzed this film, I began to realize, she's actually talking about uh, it's almost erased, that identity. We don't talk about Anglo Indians anymore. So I feel that's a very important presence in that film, the Anglo-Indian teacher, and how she's slowly getting erased. It's so symbolic, that she's slowly getting like, let's say, uh, outsmarted, outclassed by Indians because a teacher with I think more qualifications come to take her place, and I think she interacts and the students' interaction with her is better than the way the students interact with her when she's teaching Shakespeare.
Mm.
So I think that was symbolic, the way she's getting eased out, and also the way she portrays that young couple.
Mm.
I mean, it's like it's like a balancing act. She's so selfless. Okay, she's actually she's naive also. That she actually believes that this guy is going to write a novel, whereas he's actually using it as a place where he can get intimate with his girlfriend. So I think there was I won't call it dark humor, but there's a very wry sense of humor there. Like, how you fool the elderly. And and also that selfish thing, they move away from her completely. At the end,
Mm.
they don't want to recognize her. And she's left alone at the end, reciting King Lear.
Mm.
Because Lear at the end of Shakespeare's play is also rejected, right? And the only person who accepted was already dead.
See, at
So
that moment of time to have so much of depth in cinema. I mean,
yeah,
only Bengali movies, I would say, would have that. Somehow, I feel. I mean, I can really associate that. It's fantastic portrayal of the characters there. But another movie that I would really like you to talk about is definitely Mr. and Mrs. Iyer.
uh, I think it becomes relevant. I think in today's date,
Yeah,
given the kind of films that we are having, like it's
uh,
so propagandist. The language of cinema is totally out. Okay,
absolutely.
it's like yeah. I mean, there's a particular narrative because I'm working on a paper on violence right now,
Oh my
and
God.
I'm looking at two very recent films. Yeah, Durandar, the first
One
part,
and two.
and
My God, so much of
I'm
violence.
not looking at two. Yeah,
Okay.
and it's become
Two,
an
you would
aesthetics
be.
actually.
Oh my God, it's like as if somebody is really enjoying doing this, enjoying so much of violence. And the way the public is really appreciating the movie, and I feel that how much of violence are you used to? I mean, that you take it as something very normal. So that's where I feel personally that that's where cinema, the parallel cinema comes handy. I think it's like a cooling balm over you. I mean, that's what I feel. I mean, you mentioned Dhurandhar and I had to say that somehow. That I personally feel that we as a society are getting so used to violence that a narrative
Yeah.
like that is something that we take with a big box of popcorn in the cinema halls. I mean, it's like that. What do you feel? I don't know about this, but I feel that same. And since you're working on the paper on violence, what is your specific take on that? Sorry to take away
Uh,
from the narrative, but let's talk about that a little bit.
so it's for a special issue that looks at like societal violence and the influence of cinema.
Hmm.
And it's also vice versa, right? It's like working together. Like I am actually trying to sort of replicate what I see in society, and I try to bring it to cinema. And also sometimes cinema is reflected on
Absolutely.
society. So that the Chava thing happened. That
Hmm.
and the point is like you begin to see cinema as truth. That I think is a very dangerous part. I
Sorry.
mean, you should see cinema as like not reality, but it can be used. Of course, it's a very powerful medium. It's become an extremely powerful medium. So I think there should be more films like Mr. and Mrs. Iyer right now.
Yeah.
Like, and given the present political scenario, where whatever your political positions were
Hmm.
before, now you have to take some totally different positions right now, given the geopolitical situation and your needs.
Hmm.
So I think there is more space for that kind of film because I'm not saying that she's talking directly about his Hindu Muslim unity, but the fact that humanity is more important than your religious or social identity. And I love the way Konkana's character like took a complete like 360-degree turn. She doesn't want to drink water. I mean, she's a Tamil Brahmin, so I can
Hmm.
tell you that Tam Brahms are way more conservative than Bengali Brahmins. I'm a Bengali Brahmin, I know. Like we are very cool about everything. Okay,
Hmm.
uh, we eat fish, we eat everything. But down south and up north, Brahmins are like more strict, right, about these things. So, and she won't even drink the water. She was hesitant about sitting next to him also. And at one point of time in Bengali society, it was like if a Muslim kind of like, crossed your path, even the shadow, like, the Brahmin will probably go and take a bath and all. I think she brought in that, feeling into that film, I think. She did. And the way she was reacting, and then total change. Like she falls in love with him. So that I think,
Don't you think it is one of her finest movies on human connection? Aparna's?
yeah, I think it is. I think it is. I think that's probably the best.
Yeah.
And
Certainly.
maybe Goinar Baksho.
Yeah. That definitely, which is quite witty and layered, I would say.
Yeah, and I think there's a bit of Ray's influence on that because she
Hmm.
makes the in-laws talk in like rhyming couplets kind of thing. I think that was really funny and it was
True.
very telling. So yeah,
So I feel that all the movies that she's touched as a director, they have different themes. Maybe
yeah,
yeah. I mean, for example, 15 Park Avenue. I think it was quite a sensitive take on mental health and relationships. So, what would you talk about that? You've mentioned this in your book, right?
yeah.
15.
I think more than 15 Park Avenue. I would perhaps like to talk about a film called Paramita Ragdin. I've also talked
Yes.
about it because there also the issue of mental health comes in. Cuckoo is actually schizophrenic,
Hmm.
and at one level that is playing. At another level, it's a more nuanced and complex film than I think 15 Park Avenue. Like the life of a widow and again that the dry sense of humor comes back. She actually enjoys her widowhood. If you see the film very carefully, she's actually very relieved that the husband dies. Okay, and I found it very funny actually because but you also get this sense of a woman's sense of like attaining freedom at last. It's a joint family for like all her life. She's actually only listened to her husband whatever he's told her and all. And at another level, the daughter-in-law comes in and they become friends. And there's this thing of female camaraderie that comes in,
Hmm.
uh, which is not a very it's not there in most films. I think there's one, Nagesh Kukunur's Door, if you have seen it.
No, I'm not sure.
Female camaraderie is it's a
Yeah, I'll see
pretty
that.
nice film.
Okay.
Yeah, so this female camaraderie is something that is not explored in like
Hmm.
in Indian cinema at all that way. It's there in Mahanagar also, like where the heroine actually, gives up her job because she feels a friend has been slighted for no reason, or like thrown out of her job for no reason. I think it's there. You should watch Paramita Agni if you've not seen it.
Definitely. I'll already write
Yeah.
it down that I must see that. Now, one thing, but I really wanted to ask, since I was going through the book and also the fact that you've also interviewed her, when you were talking to her about cinema, were you trying to get into her mind as to what makes her create such magnificent art form and such a great bouquet of movies? What is it about her that makes her do such wonderful things? What did you really analyze about her? Is it because she's a Bengali director for that matter? I mean, you have the culture thing and the depth really rooted inside. That's how you've grown up with this fair, very nice, balanced cinema that you've watched, even if your parents said that. But of course, you've had the option of watching such great and deep movies, and now at this stage, you've been making such wonderful movies. So, what is it about her that is so excellent? What did you really discover about her?
I think her own experience as a woman come like I think it plays a real major role. I think in the way she looks at women or she perceives their conditions.
Yes.
Plus, her father also belongs to the Brahmo Samaj, if I'm not mistaken. So
Okay.
they
I
come with
didn't
that
know that.
legacy of they come with that legacy of like women's emancipation. I
Hmm.
mean, they are the ones who actually the Brahmo Samaj actually brought in women's emancipation in Bengal for the first time,
Hmm.
and also in India for that matter. So I think she's quite deeply involved in that thing. I felt, the
Hmm.
condition of woman, exploring that, how she's like how the woman attains her identity, and also I think her own personal life. I think it is a lot of bearing on the kind of films that she makes. She's thrice married. Uh, One daughter with the first husband, the second daughter with the second husband, and the second husband and she have been like I think they had continued to be friends and all. But I think her own personal life did come to have a bearing on the way she saw women and all. Like, they need to be strong, they need to find their own ways. I felt that.
But when you were revisiting her body of work, did you really change your own understanding of the world? I mean, you already, from the last so many years, talking about cinema, writing about parallel cinema. So, did she happen to change your perspective on parallel cinema? Did you learn few things from her that you didn't know? The What was the one takeaway from her interviews or the fact about the movies that you really studied in detail? So how did it really enhance you as a researcher on cinema?
I think she has a lot, like, she tries to explore a lot of, like, topics, and
Mm,
uh, she tries to engage with contemporary events more. I felt that, like in Arshi Nagar, she actually started talking about these real estate sharks in West Bengal, who are trying to take over like land
mm,
and all. For a long time, I think in Bengal that was a problem, that people, like all the industry, I mean, we don't have too many industries in Bengal. So one of the things that people started indulging in is, like, real estate. So
mm,
she brought in that concept into Arshi Nagar,
mm,
like the mafia, the land mafia, etc., etc. I think that's one of the things that I noted about her, that she engages with contemporary events quite a lot. If it's like communalism at one point of time, when she's making a film or she's thinking about making a film, she will engage with that.
mm,
Uh, Not so with other directors that have come before, like let's say Ray or Ghatak. Ghatak, of course, his entire life was centered on, like, trauma of the partition, which he never came out of. All his films are dealing with the partition.
mm.
But more than Aparna Sen, I think a more feminist director would probably be Ray. I mean, uh, I think she's learned also a lot from him. There's a lot of influence. She herself acted in his films,
Mm.
and like used to go frequently to that place and all. I think that influence is there. But I think she's, like, she's made her own way. I think as a film director, she's found her own, like, path, or she's found her own voice. I think I think Sai Paranjape was the only other film director who was making films at the time she started. Her films are so different. And this person, as you said, art cinema, Bengali culture. So I think that also played a major part in the way she framed her stories and films. I don't know if I've answered your question.
No, 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 you've answered it pretty well. I also want to know in the current context, why do you think Aparna Sen's journey, cinematic journey, matters today? And how do you think the young cinema makers or the directors or maybe writers, what is the takeaway they should take from Aparna's journey? What is it that is so important about her that you need it as perhaps a case study or perhaps a master class in cinema making and acting also in some ways?
Uh, the reason why I wrote this book was basically, I thought she deserved a book. And
So right.
yeah, I think she deserved a book because it's important to kind of like, analyze her as a director. Um, Maybe like, I don't want to sound too critical, but the kind of films that we have in Bengal right now, um, there's this particular director, Srijit Mukherjee. He started out pretty well. So I've written an article on him for a anthology. So he started out pretty well, he was a very promising director. But then, I think his thing has become too commercial right now. So I think there should be a return to art cinema in Bengal. And they shouldn't think so much of commercialization, I mean, Iti Mrinalini in her oeuvre is quite commercial actually. It's about an actress which, it carries the shadow of commercialization, right? The life of an actress. So that is there, but at the end of the thing, it's like she's exploring, her evolution as a woman, her evolution as a human being, how she deals with life. So I think Bengali cinema really needs to get back to that kind of filmmaking again. And we don't have any woman filmmaker, excepting one. I can't recall her name right now, but she's working with another man. So we don't have independent women filmmakers in Bengal anymore. So it's like, so I think we need more women filmmakers right now. And, if they get inspired to kind of emulate her, try to tell women's stories. Because the way stories are told in Bengali cinema, they are entertaining. Of course, they're very entertaining, they're funny. But like, somewhere that the thing of commercial thing comes in, which is, I think it spoils the language of cinema and you don't get to tell good stories.
No, that's a very,
I
very
think that way she's important.
definitely she is. But anything else about the book that you would like to discuss? Perhaps we have not discussed and perhaps we've not really brought about. Something, some angle that you think should be told to the readers so that, I mean, I might have missed out few things, I'm sure. Because of the time, it happens that we miss out on some important point, and I don't want to do that with such a good book as this, and about a very, very important character and director and actor. I would say that anything that you would like.
I feel that, yeah, I feel that, maybe I should have actually looked at her as an actress in depth, because at that time also she was one of the most successful commercial actresses in Bengali cinema. I could have done that. I should not have listened to her. But, like, she made it very clear that she didn't want her career as an actress to be discussed. Like, she laid more emphasis on her career as a director. Probably she holds it off like, at a higher value than as an actress. But I think as a critic, I should not have got kind of like, swayed.
Maybe
so I think that was one.
Have you talked about Teen Kanya, the movie? Maybe I missed that.
Yeah, but I haven't spoken about Teen Kanya.
That is a very
it's a debut. Yeah, and that film is really good. Samakti is really, really good. It's very funny.
Yes.
And because on either side, you have two films. Like it's a trilogy. So not trilogy. I mean, I don't know, 3 short films, and Samakti is placed right in the middle, and you have two really serious films on either side. and the way Ray has treated her character and the way she actually played that
Mm.
wife, young wife, on whom sense dawns.
Yeah.
She like it's like a Bildungsroman,
Mm.
and
Why I mentioned because I
acting was
really
pretty
want to
good.
see that movie. I've heard so much about it. I've not watched, so I don't know about
Yeah,
it.
I mean,
So I'm,
you'll really enjoy watching it.
and even this movie called Titli, I think, with her daughter, Konkana.
Titli is made by Ritu Parna Ghosh,
Yeah, but she
and
acted.
she's acted in it with Konkona. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can watch that also. It's actually pretty nice. It's got Mithun Chakraborty.
So, but
I
we
don't know
really look
what is the
forward
opinion
to
he's.
your writing on her acting also, because that's something that people would definitely want to know more and discuss more. So,
Yeah,
any
and I think I would like to place on record my thanks to Yamini Chaudhary at Rupa.
okay,
She's left Rupa, but she was nice enough to actually sign this on, because
okay,
these are topics which are very niche, like
absolutely.
Aparna Sen and all. And when I worked on Shomindu Roy, also I was told at HarperCollins that this is a very niche subject.
Hmm.
Not too many takers, it won't sell, because I understand. The publishing industry is almost like cinema. You're making it because you are looking forward to getting some money back. So
Sadly,
and
that
she
is
was
how
brave
it
enough
is
to take
now.
this.
Sadly, that is how it is
Yeah, it's like
now.
that.
You know
You
how it
work with
is.
them, you know.
Yes. But
Yeah.
having said that,
So
books like the kind of genre that you're working at, these books are important. These books are needed. Otherwise, how about in future generations? How will they come to know the great work being done by all these cinema stalwarts? That's important. This documentation is very important
yeah,
work.
because the other book is just looking at conversations, right?
Yeah.
Like people talking about her. And I will obviously talk about Aparna Sen in very flattering terms, right? I'll
Hmm.
not be critical. I've tried to be critical also. Like I as a critic, I think and given my JNU background, like that, the critical acumen comes into play. Like I can't say it's all good. Even for
Hmm.
Ray, I've not said that he's all good. There are loopholes in his films. There are problems in his films. I think it's the same for her. She once told, I think in an interview, she said in an interview that Zoya Akhtar has a very no, not Zoya Akhtar. Yeah, Zoya Akhtar has a very male gaze, and Farah Khan has a very male gaze.
Okay.
She actually said that. She went on record and said that. But the point is, she also has it, and I've written that in the conclusion. You know, you,
Yeah.
you can't be all you're very great. I mean, even great people have their moments of weakness and all, right?
That's why we need
And
authors like
flaws.
you, the critics like you. Otherwise, how it is. We will only get a book in which, if it's all praises, we just take it as it is because we like to trust the writing word. But yes, if there are critics, if we come to know the other side, it's very important, I think. Even as a journalist, even as a writer, it's very important to talk truth and tell truth. And I'm very happy that this is what you're doing and you're going in the right direction, I must say. And we look forward to many more books. So